Thank you, Olise. Hello, everybody. My name is Yvon Boutry, and I'm the security infrastructure team leader at Telindus, Luxembourg. And I'm very proud to participate to this presentation with Jean-François.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jean-François Job. I'm head of services delivery at Telindus, and I'm also very glad to virtually meet you this morning. The purpose of the presentation this morning with Yvon is how to organize and protect your infrastructures against top threats. And we will use also a key theme during our presentation, which is a well-known saying from William Shakespeare, which is better 3 hours too soon than a minute too late. So let's start now with Yvon, and we will start by talking about IT design evolution.
Yes, right, Jean-François. IT infrastructure is in constant evolution now, and bigger and towards new horizons as cloud services like SaaS, IaaS, PaaS. Security is becoming more and more complex, and attacks more and more sophisticated. It is really difficult for company now to stay on top on this evolution. Please. So we are vulnerable on having infrastructure at any time. Sometimes it's quickly detectable because you get a CryptoLocker message pop up, but sometimes it can be more sophisticated. You can try to identify it with malicious email, unusual password activity, identify a suspicious pop-up, report an unexpected network lawless. There are many things, there are many examples, but it's difficult and it can be an issue if you don't discover it quickly.
So what are the attack trends for 2020? So for resuming everything, you can see here on the left-hand side and right side, two graphics coming from ENISA annual landscape report, which are very interesting to read. On the left side, you can see that some threats category have, of course, decreased, being stable or increased during 2020. As an example, you can see that web application attacks are stable and that spam is decreasing. And this is almost due to the fact that enterprises are more and more mature for protecting against that kind of attacks. But you can see also that the hackers are very intelligent and are using also the context and the situation of the crisis, the COVID crisis, and that some category of attacks are really increasing, like ransoming, like phishing attacks, like identity theft of the user, which are working remotely today and for some months now. On the right side, you can see that they just adapt their attack techniques using, by example, the teleworking infrastructure, using more phishing, email or SMS attacks, and using also applications which are developed for giving some information to everybody about COVID virus map, by example. Using that kind of attacks, they succeed to exploit RDP or drive-by compromise using attacks on the web browser of the user for gaining access to the enterprise's environment and deploying, spreading ransom attacks, Trojan, etc., with the same goal, which is, of course, stealing your data or doing ransoming. For giving you a more typical example of ransom during COVID, you know, of course, that your users are teleworking now and gaining access to the enterprise using a VPN. Attackers send phishing emails to your user, which are at home. And if ever the user clicks on the link, the nightmare starts with, of course, a malware which is downloaded, executed on the laptop of the user and then spread to the enterprise assets through the VPN. When the malware is activated, of course, the next step is, of course, to communicate with the command and control servers of the hacker and to receive a public key which will be used on your user assets and your enterprise's assets for encrypting every file that they can encrypt, and then launch a ransom screen with a nice, "Dear friend, we need you to give us some bitcoins for giving you access again to your data." And this communication, if you are not prepared for reacting against that kind of attacks, you have no choice. You will have to communicate with the hacker for paying bitcoins, ransoms, and then receiving maybe back the private key, allowing you to restore your data and continuing to work. This is the worst case, but it occurs, and we will see it later. But first, let's talk a little bit of this real case. It occurs in 2020 in Luxembourg, and it was a minute too late. Attack via an exploit, which was using a known vulnerability, but the customer, bad luck, did patch too late, and when the attack occurs, it was already too late. The CryptoLocker spread on the application server of the customer, the Active Directory, the mail system, etc., etc. And when the ransom screen was shown, it was already too late. The customer did shut the internet access, but the data was already exfiltrated. It was too late. You can imagine, of course, the huge crisis that occurred in that case. And the goal now is to know how to avoid this 1 minute too late, how to react. And I let the word to Yvan.
Yes, sure. When the minute is passed, it's indeed too late, of course, but too late to avoid a crisis, but maybe not too late to take a quick action. And so the goal here is, first of all, to analyze the problem, after to take action and to do the remediation. And for this, Telindus cover all areas of expertise. We have 50 engineers, something like this, 50 engineers in charge of the security in different teams. And we have SOC teams, we have operation team, we have infrastructure teams, we have tier teams, governance also, of course. And it's a different step on different team in order to create a remediation plan together with the customer. And it's the goal of this important step.
So what we did in a nutshell for that crisis at the customer side, we decided to, with the customer, to set up a new infrastructure in parallel using our UFlex infrastructure, which are private cloud for hosting, managing data and applications of our customers. And so with our different teams at Telindus, we set up a new private context for hosting new servers for this customer. We also, of course, connect with redundancy existing customer DC with our DC for allowing this connectivity. And we analyze this, of course, and participate to the analysis of the security incident for seeing the extent of the damage before doing any restore activities. And last but not least, we restore all mandatory servers, allowing the customer to be back online for his business. But this is a minute too late and what we did for the crisis. But what is also very important is to know how to improve.
Yes, it's important to respond immediately, but afterwards, you really need to build a strategy plan. It's important to discuss with the client what the priority are, on what the service are vital on the business. And with all this information, this allows you to think about how to solve the problem, how to improve security, and to define a schedule because not everything can be done at the same time, and it's really important to define the different steps of the remediation and the improvement of the infrastructure. Please. Yes. Then it's time to put in practice what we have thought before, of course, and this is called the onboarding phase. It's time to move from theory to practice and to implementing various solutions, such as its example, but we talk about segmentation, about NIC, about kind of proxy, but they are, depending of the customer, there are many things to do, of course. And it's also time to write the documentation and produce to facilitate the transition to operation and the follow-up of the ongoing strategy. The last step is to perform the move to operation, of course. And for this, it's important to set up the monitoring, alert, backup, log collection, and of course, quality handover, because the meaning of all this action is to start again with a solid foundation.
Yeah, so based on this improvement strategy, onboarding and move to operation activities, what we did for resolving the crisis situation, there were two main actions. New reactive security setup with our security experts. So they improve a lot of different assets and services on the customer network with new antivirus firewalls settings, implementation of network segmentation for reducing the scope of the attacks, upgrading, of course, everything which was necessary, patching, and also putting some improvement on the remote access services. There were also some proactive security setup realized with a new connectivity with our Cybersecurity and Intelligence Operations Center, allowing to centralize and correlate all logs, security logs related to the customer assets. And last but not least, the strategy decided with the customer was to outsource the security operations of its assets to our Telindus Managed Security Services Center. As you know, security is more and more complex, and the customer decided to trust Telindus for operating for him that kind of assets. So, as a conclusion to these best practices incident and these trends for 2020, what we can say, taking again our well-known saying, better 3 hours too soon. Our advice with Yvon is to do risk analysis to know your valuable assets. Knowing your assets, knowing what will cost you if you are hacked, knowing what will be complicated to restore or not is very important. Based on this, you can really define your strategy and implement strong security policies to protect your assets. When it's done, don't forget to check them. And checking the security is not something very complicated. You have different possibilities on the market. One being to use intrusive testing, and Telindus can also provide you that kind of services. Be also ready for the next attacks because you will receive some attacks. So using our expert services and the team of Yvon, you can always provide improvement on your infrastructure using network segmentation, using orchestration and automation of the services in order to avoid human errors. You can also improve your access control for the network infrastructure, but also for your data using identity access management, by example. Don't forget your endpoint protection. Everybody is using laptop, iPads, iPhones, etc., to connect to the infrastructure, but also to the assets that you are putting in the cloud, private, hybrid, or public cloud. So do protect your endpoint. Use also, of course, content filtering for avoiding the unwanted attachment, the phishing attacks, spam, etc. Nice solutions are existing on the market. And last but not least, do patch and do cover the vulnerabilities of your systems. Another very important point is to maintain reliable backups following the 3-2-1 rule that you know probably. So always use 3 copies of your data, 1 for the production and 2 for the backups. Use 2 different formats for backupping your data on disk and tape. And of course, put one of the copy offsite in a disaster recovery center, by example, avoiding to have a direct access to that data for a hacker if ever an attack occurs. Another very important point, have a look in your strategy if it's not better to outsource your security operations to managed security service providers. You know, and we explained with Yvon to you that security is more and more complex and spread not only on your data center, but also now in the different clouds, public clouds, hybrid clouds, private clouds. And managing this security is really more and more complex and cost more and more too. So just think about outsourcing these operations is a good idea. And at Telindus, we have dedicated teams which are running now since more than 8 years with something like 60 people in Belgium and Luxembourg being able to provide that kind of services. Monitor your assets. We spoke about SOC. Use SOC for centralizing your logs and having some correlation of these logs for being able to identify, detect, and then act against the threats. Increase the security awareness of your user. Start point of all of these attacks is some kind of phishing, as we've seen. So giving security awareness to your user will give you more trust and will avoid you a lot of attacks. And there are different other presentation today which will give you more on this security awareness information. Subscribe to our threat hunting and incident response. These kind of teams exist on the market, and we have also one team dedicated for doing this. So proactively hunting for the threats and giving you information, as we've seen recently with, by example, the Exchange attack on the Microsoft systems. And also that kind of teams is able to give you response and help you to respond in case of an incident. Last but not least, consider cyber insurance for giving you the ability to cover your damages if ever you have damages. And we will finish this presentation letting you with a good question. In case of damage, you have to try to avoid to being in a situation where you have to think, have I to pay or not to pay the ransom if I am hacked and if my enterprise is down because of this lack of security preparation. That's all for our presentation. If ever you have questions, you are free to ask them.
Yes, don't hesitate. You can write a question and we can answer.